summed up from an interview that Anne did with Anne McNay in the States, and it said, the London-based Paris-born singer-songwriter has been on both sides of the camera for all of her life. She has been photographed by Lord Snowdon, Mario Testini, etc., and her image has been used in numerous magazine features and commercials. At home in London, she blends her work as a musician, chanteuse, and making movies and taking photographs, especially Polaroids, her favourite medium, which she overpaints and manipulates to reach each one will be unique. And just to give a brief, because this part of it we're going to deal with Anne's early life. In the biography, it said Anne obviously lived in Paris. She was brought up in an artistic home, which said that you were selected to be in a school choir, and it was quoted you had a golden voice of an angel. And as a teenager, as it said on the film, Anne was in an all-girl band, punk
yes, anti-climax.
So
already.
What about your early life?
Which bit?
Well, a bit where it said that you were in a choir.
Well, I had a very strange upbringing. Everybody has different strange upbringing. My family came from all kinds of parts of the France, all different backgrounds, and my childhood, the memory I have of my childhood is a bit like a David Lynch film. It's a bit like, the monster who comes out and Razorhead. It was very dark. I had a very dark childhood. It's very, I'm not going to go into length about it, but moved around in different parts of Paris. My parents who didn't have any money, they always wanted me to go to good schools, and education at the time was free in Paris. I mean, it's still free, but I don't know if you still get education. So I ended up in good schools, but they were free. So there's always this anticlimax, always the different sides of the coins that have shaped my life. My father was a jazz musician, but he grew up in that kind of Saint-Germain-des-Prés thing. My grandmother was a friend of Jean Cocteau. All kind of different influences, which I discovered later on. So, for a very long time, even when I was a teenager and I was into punk, I didn't understand things. I didn't understand anything, to tell you the truth. So for me, the punk thing was instantly attractive because of the theatricality, because of being able to express myself with not much. I never went to music school, or I never went to art school, so that was appealing to me straight away. I used to go to the club, see the band. I was very young, but there was a lifestyle of people who wanted things to happen at the time, and that shaped things to come, but I was still obviously very young. So that was the first part. I used to play guitar. I didn't used to be the singer in the band. I was instantly attracted by sound. Even though I was attracted by the theatricality of the punk thing, I wasn't attracted so much by the image, not so much by the imagery to start with. To start with, it was very much the sound that moved me, and so something very primal. Because obviously punk music was very primal, and so it expressed, I guess, the teenager's angst. So if you're a teenager, that's perfect music, to express your angst through. So that was the first part. Obviously, there was things that I didn't understand from where I came from my childhood. There was obviously some dark things, and that was the thing that appealed to me the first. And I think my life really started then. I felt I was in some kind of young. Teenager, early teens, I was very young, and I think that, to me, it made me, I really felt before that I was living in a black box. Some people had very happy childhood, mine didn't feel happy. I wasn't starving, even though my parents were struggling to put food on the table. I was never starving, but it somehow psychologically felt like a dark box. It's very difficult to explain why. And, my childhood felt like a bad trip. And so punk came along, and to me that was, just a way of expression, and it was really fantastic. And I got into it really intensely because I met an English boy who was my best friend with the Sex Pistols. So, I used to have I was at school and I was 15, and grandmother used to come and pick me up at school. I mean, so it was quite a strange thing because I really fell into it at the deep end. I mean, I was really there, even though when I used to come to England, I spoke very bad English, but I was there. I was in the squads in Stoke Newington, where the pistols were, and so that was for me. That was the opening door. In a sense, even if in my home there must have been obviously some artistic, things going around about, and so for this time, that very important time, art was about people's madness, and I think some people will agree with me.
Well, tell me about you mentioned freedom. So I mean, in your early life, and we'll move on to your life later. How important was freedom for you to explore yourself, explore your creativity, your personality, and what you wanted to be in life?
Well, I mean, creative, music, art is the way to freedom. I think that's what creates art, is that you cannot help it. You have to do it in order to retain 10% of sanity. That's the base of any art. Because when that happens to transcend, there is transcendence, and everybody can understand that feeling, because we're all on earth for a little while, so we are all kind of deep down scared of death, and some people have pointed that men, artists and painters, are much better at art because they have a much bigger fear of death. No, but it's true.
That's true.
No, but it's true. It's true. If you look at men's artwork, it's in a way maybe stronger because there is this fear of death, and I think a lot of women artists don't have that because sometimes they have children.
Have a look at, because you have produced and originated many clubs. You've been at the Cafe Paris. You've been all over the world, and for people who don't know, just sort of say about some of the clubs.
Well, I don't know. I just like to do anything that seems quite relevant to me at the time. So, the Café de Paris was a place which had become a tête de danse. So all people used to come and dance the tango. So it wasn't, and the people didn't want anybody else to take over, because at the time you only had like rock clubs in London. So I thought, wow, all this history, it's amazing, and you could feel the souls, on the walls of the club. So I thought it would be fantastic to do something there, because it looked so good and it felt so good. Everything is an experience for me, I guess, in communication, in trying to transgress and to transmit something, about... anything. So for me, even that was a little bit of an art project.
Do you get bored easily? Are you bored?
Not necessarily, because I keep myself interested, but I like to move on to the next interesting project. Whatever it is, music, art, clubs, clothes, whatever it takes. Friendship, that's a project.
Well, friendship is definitely. I mean, for people who don't know, Anne in the 1990s was in LA and played with Leonard Cohen's musician, John Lee Hooker, and sort of many people. And you had a radio show?
Well, I was in LA 7 years, and because, I had this really bad recording contract here, big producer, small contract, so enough is enough, so I left. And so I wanted to go to LA because the next stage for me was to put the music into a more theatrical and more visual context. So I met with the late great director, Donald Cameron, who wrote and co-directed Performance, and there was a kind of empathy straight away. So I developed a film project. That was my next project, and so no, I didn't have a radio show as such. That was my main project there, and so this is a little bit of a trailer for it, even though the project had lots of different stages. So I put all these bits I had together to give a thing, because it's about I use myself as either the model of my photographs or the actor in my film, or the character in the little stories in my songs, to portray what I need to portray. So that was about a kind of somebody searching. Searching for some kind of enlightenment, and of course, it's about identity mostly, which everything I do can appear in different, it can, some filmic idea might reappear into the art, or, everything is a contribution and work in process, to what I do. So I don't see what I do in very separate, definitely separate things, it's all part of the same thing, really. And so a lot of my art after that was related to identity. Photographing myself, my own gaze on myself. A lot of it has been about, of course, feminine identity, and the erotic poetry, the Madame Sex art CDs, which I paint each of them as a little cover itself. And then from now on, I don't know what happened in the world, but everything became a big mush, like everything became generic. I saw thousands, hundreds of people in London, pretending they were doing projects to do with identity, but everything I saw was completely generic. I mean, the whole point about identity is to do something that you feel and that you've lived, not about copying a trend, And from I came back to London in 87, and so I started to do this erotic poetry in the clubs, which at the time, believe me, at the time nobody was doing that in the club in London, and everybody was like so shocked that they used to laugh, And after that, I saw everybody doing this kind of supposedly erotic style or erotic photography people. The world supposedly is still run by men, so men see. Relationship, they see the sex, they see the love, they see the mother, they see the whore. So from a woman's point of view, I wanted to try to bring the two together, because I think a lot of women, they don't put the two in separate boxes. So for me, it was my own experience through my relationships, of talking about the love and the sex side of things, and to try to find a meeting point, And then suddenly I saw all these people doing like pornography advertising kind of rubbish. And I thought, God, I'm going to have to try harder. It must be the language. It must be the language barrier or something, And so we're back. So we were back, now you can go to a gallery without seeing some supposedly erotic thing. But all I see is advertising pornography. So we're back to where we started, the same rubbish I was trying to make a commentary on. So indeed I must try harder, because people seem to have run out of ideas, and it's not like there's going to be any new ideas. No idea is fundamentally true. The only way it can be true is that if it's something that you have experienced, it's something that you have a take on, that's the only truth that there can be. That's the only originality.
So can you, if you're doing a project, can you compromise, or have you got to do it your way?
Well, I've been through every side of the business. So when I was very young, I got signed to the big producer. So I know a bit every side of the, how do you say when someone is running a marathon? I know every side of the thing, and so I know what compromise is, and if I made a compromise in my life, perhaps it was at that time, and it wasn't so much a creative compromise, but it was a compromise to try to work with somebody and try to find a compromise when I should have known better, but I was very young, that some people are not interested in finding a compromise, and I didn't know that then, because in reality the record company I was signed to was very much the ahead, and they were only avant-garde in one way, is that they were avant-garde of this kind of corporate way of thinking. Somebody, which I don't rate as an artist, who made some money, and we thought, let's rip off as many creative people as we can, and let's call ourselves the creative. And so in a way it taught me quite a lot, and I started, with with the bitter end.
What is the bitter end?
But the bitter end of seeing people who are not creative trying to suck up your creativity and making money from it.
What, so people took your work and used it for their own
Right.
uses?
Yeah. When you get no money for your work, surely, and they're making no money, you know that there's an issue there.
They were like,
So,
oh my God, no, it's normal.
No, it's normal, but it's not normal. And
No,
you know,
it's not. It's
no, but you know, having grown up with punk, I know that some things are possible.
Yeah.
You know, and I also, I know, I mean, okay, punk was a lot of inspired anyway from May 68. You know, I mean, Michael McLaren was hanging out with Con Bandit a lot, you know, so there's a lot of influences. And even before Michael McLaren died, you know, he was starting to make a film in Paris about the Paris cabaret, because when cabaret started, you know, in Pigalle at the time, where there was the clubs and the drinking, this was totally radical, totally political, totally radical, but, you know, we're not going to go into this for too long. So, you know, he certainly knew, you know, where the revolution came from. And so, you know, things are possible, much more difficult today, but still, you know, when there'd be enough people getting together and saying, fuck that shit, fuck the corporate ripping all the talented and creative artists to kind of use the ideas for their corporate puppets, you know, maybe when enough people get together, you know, we can start to change things, you know, because there's a time where enough is enough, it goes with the wheel of time, you know, there's a time enough is enough. You know, the difference, I think the main difference today is that, as I was telling earlier, is that artists are sucking up to people with money, when before rich people used to suck up to the artists, you know, because of course the artist can create something. Douglas is shaking his head.
Why are you shaking your
I
head?
don't
That's-
totally agree with that.
Right.
Because to begin with, around now, not all artists, okay, there's going to be some kind of influence or connection somewhere along the line. But you could argue that to some extent, thus it ever was.
Art was always a commercial commodity, but the rich people that asked
Patronage
that
or whatever has
the
always had
patronage
some kind of
looked-
influence on production.
yes, but they looked up at the artists and they never thought that they could be the artists. That's why they were, you know, commending them. Today, the artists are producing generic rubbish because they think that because the people with the money have convinced them that that's only the only thing that they're going to buy, because the people with the power and the money wants to be the artist, because being the artist is the good gig. You know, not in terms of money, but in terms of anything that's interesting in the world. It's much better to create than to count your bank account. You know, obviously it's the good gig. You know.
Could I
Yeah.
ask you, as a struggling artist
Yeah.
myself, what's the perfect balance in a world that does require money and you have to do a little bit of kind of sucking up?
Well,
How
I
do
remember
you
putting on
get to
Facebook.
do what you
Yeah.
want
I know.
and get financed?
I
Because
went through
I
all
would like
that.
to know the answer.
Well,
I'd really like to
I
know
put
how
on
to do that.
Facebook once because, you know, I know very rich people and I know very struggling artists. You know, I love to see everywhere and to know everything. Hopefully curiosity won't kill the cat, but I put on Facebook once, oh, you know, wouldn't it be so great to find a happy medium? And some guy wrote, you're so fucking stupid. I mean, a friend, you know. You're so fucking stupid, that's just never going to happen, you know. So, you know, I thought, you know, with my ideas originally to make compromises and to find a happy medium, I think that's I've come to the conclusion that's not possible. And so you have to be quite violent with these people, not necessarily physically, you know, but I think, you know, you see today, so these people, they thought, oh yeah, being the artist is a good gig, because that's the way to control humanity. Because in reality, humanity doesn't react to money. They react to food they can eat, sure, but they don't react to money. They react to the fact that they feel that they belong to humanity. So the people at the top, they thought, oh, if we can control that, we're just going to control the entire world. So we're going to pretend we are artists by using artists, you know, stealing real artist ideas, having our artist puppet and control the world, which is what is happening at the moment. Now, if punk happened, it's because the same thing. I don't listen to punk music anymore because it was then, but I'm saying there is the same principle that at the time you had loads of big money budget spent on really horrible music. You had a really horrible dead art scene, and I think we've come full circle. So, of course now you've got the internet, and that has changed a lot of things. But I don't know, I'm the ultimate optimist. I think that there will, it's bound to change. And I'm not against rich people, I have to add that, as long as they give me their money. No, I mean...
Well, that's a pretty good process.
No, but what I'm trying to say is, the problem is not with people having money, it's just that they have been pretending that they are the artists, and that doesn't agree with me,
I'd like to ask, we can slightly go back, and because in this part, ask about you, the person, because in the interview, when I looked at the interview with Anna, it's a really interesting line you said, maybe you can expand on it. You said, my aim is to mix the world of dreams with eroticism and the idea of freedom.
right?
So,
Well, because eroticism is about freedom. I mean, sometimes there can be a thin line, of course, between pornography and eroticism, but that's kind of what I've been trying to discuss. I mean, with eroticism, as I said, it will go further than death. It will take you beyond death. So it is about dreams. About forgetting that we are just not just, but we are flesh. So in a way, eroticism goes further than flesh. And that's the whole point. The dream, the world of dreams. So it's not about pornography. It's not about advertising. Dreams, hopes is really eroticism for sure. Yeah.
So I mean, in the time that we were speaking about your career, have you reached that aim? Because it says that.
Well, it happens to me. If not, I wouldn't preach it.
I mean, within because you've done such a wide range of projects in the area of the arts, is there anyone that is close to your heart?
Well, I mean, obviously, photography and painting is a more recent thing, so it's still more fresh. The music is something that's very natural. I mean, I'm not saying art is not that natural, but it's like I don't even think about it. But art has become like that. That's why it's quite spontaneous. I've learned. If I wasn't spontaneous when I started out, I've learned to be very spontaneous now, and that's a very enjoyable thing. And that's an erotic thing in itself. Painting is right, Paul? Painting, I mean, it's an erotic thing itself. I mean, the paint, the paint itself, everything about it, because it is the expression, and you feel totally free while doing it. So everything is quite enjoyable. Trying to run clubs in Soho, that's more difficult because you have to deal with these people, and it's difficult for them too. They have to pay very big rent, and so it's been really difficult. But I don't know. I'm hoping for the ghosts of the Huguenots to come back and strangle them. No, it's not me.
No. Okay. You've done a lot of Polaroids.
That was one project, yeah.
In one project, and how did you get into that?
That again, I mean, everything I do from real experience, because I think that's, it's a necessity for me to do it. There is always an element of, there's always a cathartic, therapeutic element. So, a girlfriend left an Argos card on the table, went to see how many points there was. That's what he left behind. I do know how to find them. Went to Argos, there was only enough points to get a Polaroid camera. True story. I said, where can I get this? I can get a Polaroid camera. So I got the camera. There was a really huge, great mirror, old mirror where I used to stay. And, it was a therapeutic, regarding the relationship. So I took these photographs, and when he used to pick up his clothes, I gave him a photograph each time. And eventually we got back together. And then it didn't last because obviously he also didn't understand the arm bit. You know, they understand the erotic bit. So you know, I think people do art. I mean, not the ones who do it just for the money, but people who love their work. I mean, they do it as some kind of therapeutic, cathartic exercise. You know, so everything. You know, when I wrote the first album, of course, it was about a relationship, and a lot of the painting I do is not about relationship, because I paint a lot of women, and sometimes, you know, not pretty women, just the idea of Madame Sex, because it's more about. I tried with this stuff to do a kind of a elementary life force. The woman, you know, the woman who gives life, you know, the life force. So it's very spontaneous, you know, I like to do it without thinking, without planning anything, and I really enjoy it because it gives me back a lot of energy, you know. So each project is different, but a lot of it is cathartic, and some of it, and that's cathartic and therapeutic as well, because it makes me feel good, you know.
So, I mean, would you say, that you're feminist?
There's probably an element, but feminism was a long time ago, and the people who claim to be feminists today, they're like journalists. I mean, you know,
Well, it's become
pop
a
stars,
hot
journalists,
topic.
totally retards, you know, claim to be feminists. I mean, let's face it. I mean, today, anybody will use any kind of appellation.
So this is much more, as far as I know,
Why
much
don't you ask
more
my poem?
informal. So there'd be interactive
Poem in
questions.
between?
Yeah,
Whenever you want.
yeah.
Read a poem in between, then we'll start
When?
part two. Now.
Okay.
Well, it can all be part of part.
Yeah, it's all part two.
All
Everything
part
is
two.
everything. Everything is everything.
Everything
So this is a
everything.
little poem from my Madame Sex art CD. Some of it is erotic, some of it is more surrealist. You know, you have to have a little bit for everybody. So it goes like this. Somewhere in the galaxy is envy at the human race. The enveloping shadow is shaping its contour. With a velvet armor, it is as dark as a widow. Do hear the call, welcome the fall, approach the goal, point to the hall. To precisely define it, it takes more than a chord, and to experience it, allow a mellow word. Something like that.
Yeah.
They're little, but they're strong.
Petit mais plus fort.
That's beautiful.
That's Madame Sexy.
So has anybody got any questions for Anne?
I'd like to ask you, you know, being a woman who's tried to have a career in a very difficult industry and continue to keep on trying, do you think that it's harder for women than men?
But you know, it's funny because I've never thought about it like that. I thought it's hard, everything is hard in general. And then I was speaking to this man last year who knows about women a lot in terms of the domination of women in the industry, because he used to work in the pornographic industry. And he said to me, your problem, you know, Anne, is that you are a woman. You know, and I never thought about it in this way. Honestly, I mean, we all have issues, you know. And when I thought about it and I look back on it, you know, I mean, sure, it's an issue because, I mean, I'm not only a woman, but I'm a woman who wants to satisfy herself. So, you know, I mean, most women in the industry, if you look at it, their boyfriend is either their, you know, their sponsor, you know, usually the partner, the one who comes up with the money, and or they are, you know, totally used and abused. That's the case with Amy Winehouse, obviously. So, sure, I think, you know, and of course, you know, the whole point of doing my Polaroids, I was taking myself in pictures, and that was very important because I had been taken in pictures a lot. And you know, there could be glamorous pictures, whatever pictures, but I never felt it was me. and a lot of women in the industry just are a commodity for men. I mean, there's no doubt about that. I'm not saying all men are horrible, and so that, but and they will make these women pretend they have messages of feminism. It's all a big scam. Because if a woman was a feminist, she wouldn't dangle her ass the way she does. I don't have an issue with nudity.
Beyonce.
Perhaps.
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with nude body. That's not the point.
No, it's
the point is how you use the nude body. I mean, a feminist is, So then, I get the arguments. Oh, Nina Simone was a feminist, but she wasn't very sexy. I mean, what kind of argument is that?
But also, why does being a feminist mean you have to be sexy? Full stop.
I mean, it's like that's what we were talking earlier. All the notions are completely confused. It's really, we are really controlled at the moment, and it's not paranoia. It's not a conspiracy theory.
It's reality.
There
So
really
it's
is,
true.
our way of
Can I
thinking.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think women now own their own sexuality?
Do
Women,
Do women now own their own sexuality?
some. I mean,
Do you think so?
Some,
I think it's very rare, actually.
I mean, the problem with younger generation is that they are so brainwashed. I mean, not everybody, of course, but there's just huge brainwash. The
Media feed.
social media, the thing. I mean, of course, you can look at it with a distance, but a lot of people don't look. They just hope they don't look at it with a distance. It's complete brainwash. Had to do the buzz every day. Any controversial rubbish for the sake of it. It's not controversial in any way. It's only controversial because it's going to provoke a reaction. I mean, it's just going to. I mean, I'm sorry, but you have to accept there's a malaise. I mean, there is a malaise in society. One would be silly to
Absolutely, I agree.
not.
I totally
See.
agree. Can I ask you this? Do you believe it's completely possible to be a man and to be a feminist, a male feminist?
I do.
Well, I mean, men can
Because
be
I would like to think of myself
Well, I mean,
as a male feminist.
obviously, men
mean?
can. Yeah, exactly.
I totally believe in the equality between
But is
men and women.
that what feminist means?
For me, feminism
Even
is
if they're
about the importance
Right.
of removing all of this, if I can say it, bullshit between women and men as sexual objects that are defined by that. A man and a woman are two human beings and they've got their right to do their own thing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously,
And I'm
you're
passionate
gonna have
about
men
that.
that are a little bit more evolved and don't only think with their groins, but generally men do things with their groins, and that's the reality,
But that's also, if I may say, a bit sexist.
Well, I'm
Isn't
afraid
it?
a man has a dick and a woman has a vagina, therefore they
Yes.
are different.
Indeed, but they
so
both,
they
both-
feel differently.
but they both feel good, and they do their own thing.
Well, they feel good once they have sex.
Well, or just by themselves.
I mean, the point I'm trying to make is that there are men who are.
Oh, it's just a tautology. When they feel good.
I mean, there are men who are more in control, but
And it should not be so.
but a man cannot feel what a woman feels. Therefore, it can
No,
it can
and
be
nor can a woman
welcoming.
feel what a man feels.
Yes,
And
that's
a
right.
man's insecurities.
And so I mean, I deal a lot with the relationship issues. I mean, the thing is that if people are willing to make a compromise, it's fantastic, and they're willing to listen to the other person's point of view, it's fantastic. But to start with, most of the population is not especially sophisticated or especially educated. So I mean, it's nice to call yourself a feminist if you want to be open-minded, but it's not something which is common.
But don't you think both of you, because listening to both of your points, that when you're doing something, whatever it is, women use their sexuality, whether they know it or not, to sort of do what they do if they turn up for an interview or whatever it is, and also men do the same thing, and that is just, I'm being like sort of what's called devil's advocate. So I mean, it's inherent in the way that we are. We want to put our best features
Sure.
forward, and you know, sometimes a man, not from personal experience, will have to do something, and sometimes a woman.
Well, we use our instincts, you know, because that's our way of surviving.
But I want
so
to answer
deep
the
down,
question.
you know, in the war, you know the object, you know, that was never where the industries never gone bankrupt, was the elliptic, you know. I mean, I think it says a lot, you know. I mean, you know, at the moment, apparently, I read on the social media that there's never been so much students becoming kind of call girls or prostitutes, you know. That's hardly a step forward. That's hardly a definition of civilization. So even a woman calling themselves feminist doesn't mean a lot to me, because feminism was a thing that happened at a certain time, like glamour happened at a certain time. Feminism is when, you know, women fought for their right to vote, you know, and things like that. You know, that's what feminism is, and that happened at a specific time. All these trendy writers who call themselves feminists, I mean, it's just, again, a lot of hype. I think, you know, you can't change, you can improve things, but you can't completely change nature, you know. You know, women are attracted to men for certain things, and men are attracted to, you know, and it's two different worlds, and if they can understand each other well, it's great, but it doesn't happen often, I think.
I think the main objective is for people to evolve, either male or female, or basically to become good humanitarians. And the real problem is that if a man is not a humanitarian and a woman is not a humanitarian, that basically what's happening is there's abuse, and it's the involvement of their attitude to each other. And it can happen on both sides.
But even if people are very well-meaning, you know, if something happens, you know, suddenly something happens, anything, you know, to do with money, to do with work, to do with family, you know, and one person that doesn't agree, you know, it will suddenly reverse to the basic animalistic instinct, you know.
That
so
happens with religion as well, though.
And
you know,
racism.
and
Yeah,
religion
I
and
mean-
everything. It's like the kind of containment
I mean,
of anger
in
seems
a
to
way,
devolve.
has the world really moved on?
That's
Has the
what I
world
mean.
really
Not-
evolved
probably
apart
not so
from
much.
technology?
Probably not so much.
Apart from technology,
I think we
I
have.
you know, I mean, I think there are
I
things
think
you
we're
can't.
evolving, yeah. I think we are.
We're getting
It's not the same as the Middle Ages, is it?
No.
It's not the same as the Victorian.
Isn't it the same as the Middle Ages?
I think
So
there
ISIS, I mean,
Well, but
it's the
there's
same
even,
as the
but they
Middle
say,
Ages, isn't it?
in bloody Zizek, the old miserableist argument, you know, he says, you know, that, yes, obviously, and you look at ISIS, except look what's happening, but the fact that we can recognise these things
Exactly.
does say something about
Yes.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
people
you
have
say no.
always recognized these
Exactly.
things.
No,
I
no,
mean, we've
well,
had poets.
well,
They're more aware.
Well, we had the Second World War
They're more
dissertation,
aware, and that's
basically. Now we
makes
have a
bigger
retrenchment and a
difference.
return to...
Yeah, but that's
real
what the
shit.
role of the artist and the poet have always been. The artist and the poet is
And now
always
we
the
have
one,
a really dangerous...
you know.
It's not that there is more, it's that
Throughout
we
the
have more.
times, the artist and the poet has always been the one to be able to recognize that, you know, and to talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, but the rest of society is just ruled.
As they do on question time, the gentleman at the back.
I wanted to know if you still play
That's what they do.
I wanted to know if you still play the guitar, if you sing, write, and if you address many of these issues through music.
Of course. I mean, I've just recorded a new album, you know, which deals with a lot of. It's very different from the arty, experimental poetry album. I mean, I've just recorded an album with proper songs, you know, with top musicians that I did in my home, and very, very strong album. I mean, this album is very, very important, and so I can't release it by myself. Because if I release it by myself, I've got, you know, these record companies in America that look at every move I make. Every time I put anything on internet. So if I release it by myself, it will be dead in one day. So I'm gonna wait the time it takes.
Is that because you're in a contract?
No, that's because I have a certain profile in the 80s, and so there are people who are watching me, and you know they know I have good ideas, and
But when you say be dead, you don't mean that they want to steal you.
No, I mean the album will be dead if I release it by myself.
Oh, you mean you need to have the promotion?
Yeah, I need you know
You
people
need to
need
sign
know
it.
it's my album.
Yeah, you need to sign to
My
a
ideas,
like a distributor.
and so I need big a muscle to
Yeah,
do it, and
yeah.
so I need to find that. And so this kind of link in very much with with kind of where we're at, with the art, the patrons, people who are capable of promoting anything with a message, because at the moment they haven't been doing that.
I think and to be honest with you, it's always been like that. I mean, I've been working in the music industry since the early 80s, doing on the costume side,
Yes.
and heard the same thing from all the people
A
that I've
lot,
worked
but
with.
you always have the exception,
I know, but I think the problem is that if you look at even what was going on at the time of like Malcolm McLaren and all of that, I used to do stuff for the Damned, and I hung around with the Sex Pistols and all that kind of stuff, and they were very niche. And at the same time, you had the pop industry that had Dollar and all those awful.
But they were not
bands
very
that did-
niche. I mean, they were niche to start with.
That's what I mean when they started.
But it went so fast, and then it was a niche
McLaren
very
was-
quickly.
Malcolm McLaren was an expert in basically self-promotion. I mean, and he stole hundreds of people's ideas. I mean, I was at St. Martin's when Eve Goddard designed the whole collection, and Vivienne Westwood owned it, and she never designed any of it.
Yeah, but
So that happens exactly what you were talking
I know
about.
the work is recognized for. He definitely hasn't stolen that from anybody. Well, the work that he achieved is his own.
No, I understand that, but basically he was involved, at the beginning, the whole thing with him and Vivienne in the shop.
Yeah, but
That
I mean,
was all
what made the Sex
categorized.
Pistols famous was not the clothes,
No, of course not, but I mean, the whole thing is like, that whole era, like Duran Duran was a put together band. It wasn't it wasn't a bunch of individuals that got together and started playing together. It was a manufactured band by Paul Barrow from the Rum Runner in Birmingham. And it's the same thing. So that whole kind of thing where of individuality.
Well, it became a product because
Of course.
as soon as it goes through a record company,
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
You put a cover together, but I mean the energy, the energy never got diluted, and the energy never got compromised. The energy of the music never got, even though it went through a lot of different processes.
But it was a very short period of time.
Yeah, but it never got compromised, and that's why today, even today, when you think about it, what was the last interesting visual and musical project and movement? There isn't. Why? Because you recognize that energy, and that energy, even it went through many, different things, it never got compromised,
But do you feel that now that there's no individual new talents coming out, like new tribes? So if we said like punk was a tribe and like
No, I think this energy came out because there was a political context, and some people, Malcolm did want to change the world. I mean, there's no doubt about that. He might have been an asshole, whatever, but he did want to change the world. And so he could do that with the Sex Pistols, But I know a lot about this. I know how the Sex Pistols songs were cut in pieces, I know all that side of it, but they were not able to dilute the energy. And it's this energy that we are grasping on, and every student, everybody's grasping on.
I know, but it wasn't just the Sex Pistols. I mean, it was a huge movement. You have to put all the people together, like the Damned, the Skids,
Sure, of course,
Richard Jobson.
because there was a lot of unemployment, and so people grabbed the
Yeah,
guitar.
it was a complete change in a
Sure,
whole
but I think
area.
some people are better catalysts than some others.
But some people are better self-promoters as well, I'd say.
Yes, but I think it was a lucky.
But that's how it
you know,
always happens, isn't it? It's like,
But you have to have everything.
But you think, but still think, how old
You have
was,
to have
how old
everything.
was Rotten when he wrote God Save the Queen, for instance? I mean, he's about fucking 17 or organic in the UK.
But
The lyrics are so smart.
I know, but
they're
you
tiny,
have
isn't it?
Yeah, and that never-
Is this
now
the
that are
GK?
writing
That never got
amazing
changed,
songs.
you know.
No, I think it's a
No,
generational
there
thing. I
are.
think
It's
you're
also
always
luck, and it's also, the circumstances
Yeah.
happen, Charles.
Right
These
time,
people come
right
together at
place,
this
right
Hang on a
particular
second,
moment.
hang on a second,
course,
right.
yeah.
The thing is, we have to remember, and we've got two young people with us who maybe we should ask.
Yeah.
We're also
Yeah,
all
of
over
course.
50, like us three,
I'm not.
four, well, you are actually, right?
Oh, God, yeah, the benches. This is
But
the
the thing
the
is,
wonderful
recently,
fault of benches.
for example,
Yes,
if you
yes,
go
yes.
to festivals, I don't know if you've been to any, I got lost on my own recently at a festival because I lost everybody as usual. And I ended up in an area which was all new act bands, basically. And I got squashed in amongst everybody, so I couldn't get out. So I thought, oh, well, I might as well just stay here. And I was just blown away by the music that there was 17, 18-year-olds, 19, young people were making that was so fresh, so new.
Oh, good
you
for
know,
you.
so, but the thing is, I think it's a question of going out and seeing what's out there. We tend not to maybe look back or we maybe don't even have the time. You know,
Well, I have
because-
the time. I check as much as I can, and I'm sure there are some good things
There are,
happening.
for sure,
But I think what is being promoted in the mainstream is
It's so
definitely
bad
it's
not-
again.
always
That's the
been-
thing.
It's definitely
it's
not
always
No, but
press.
there's little blips here and there,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
the pumping
Johnny Rotten
that's
wasn't
lasted
even
that
like
tiny
it.
bit.
Well, what do the
Years,
young
yeah.
people add to this?
Yeah, what do
When
you
are the
think?
young
What do you think
ones?
about new? There's like interesting new music happening.
Or a culture, you know, or
I'm like a bad. I don't keep up with like
Music,
current music,
but
so
you keep
I'm.
up with current fashion, which is the same kind of
Yeah.
same part of the same.
It just goes in cycles, but fashion's a thing where it's like it's reached its because of social media. It just doesn't really exist, and like
Yes.
trends don't happen. Like
But is there new things happening? New? Well, I mean, pony girls is a new trend, isn't it?
I don't know.
Okay,
Okay,
There's so many things going on.
Pony girls are girls that
See, that's the
go
thing. You can say something because of that, and it's just like you can just make something out of anything.
No, I
So
know,
it-
but this is a whole movement of
Yeah,
young
totally.
women that go out with coloured braids in their hair. It's like My Little Pony, and they cover themselves in glitter. And I mean, actually, it's a very big in East Asia, but it's become an enormous cult thing. You know, so there are all these other things going on that we might not necessarily be aware of because it's not our. We don't necessarily look at those things.
It's not because we don't look at it. It's just because what is promoted by the mainstream is only one-dimensional. Number one.
But I think it's always been like that, Anne. I really do.
I don't know. I mean, being a musician, I know it hasn't always been like that. I mean, all the bands will tell you that. In the 80s, you were able to make a living if you were
that's
kind
the
of
big difference.
in between bands, you know.
Digital revolution.
Yeah, it's the same with rich and poor. I mean, for example, the 80s, you could make a living as not a very known band. You can't do that anymore. So no, it hasn't always been the
But
same.
isn't there so many more music venues, for example, in London than there's ever been before?
There's less music venues than there's ever been before.
Because there seems to be masses. I mean,
Really?
yeah.
They're closing them all down. Where are they? these
Well,
venues?
I know they're closing loads down in Soho and
But
broken
where are
hearted
the
about
new
that.
venues?
But Camden, there's lots of venues, isn't
What,
there?
new venues?
Well, Amadeus plays all over the place.
Camden is always that.
So-
Yeah, I mean, you
but
always
then
had
Camden-
caps and
Camden is
little
that-
Well,
inns.
pop-ups and
They change the name of the
fly-by
venues,
nights.
but-
Now that gets
Do
a
you,
bit
but do you not think there's lots of music going on?
ambiguous, uncertain,
True, yeah, there is
varied,
some
and varying and variable, doesn't it?
Sure.
It's things that are like
short,
very
Yeah,
short
there's not
term
enough
or
space to build
unpredictable.
I mean, it's very
Yeah,
much
yeah.
more black and white. There isn't in between. There used to be in between. That doesn't exist anymore. That's for sure. I mean, that's not my fantasy. That's for sure. You know, there were bands who could make a living as just touring in medium-sized venues. You cannot do that anymore. It's black and white. It's the same with the kind of money gap. Rich and poor. It's becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. So it's the same in the art world. It's either like really underground things or really big galleries. There's no in between anymore. That is a big difference.
And do you go out looking for new music? Do you go into some of the venues that still put on music?
I do as much as I can. Obviously, I have a curious mind, So I do as much as I can.
So that must drive you on then, with curiosity.
Well, I mean, if I discover interesting things today, it's going to be more like to do with human beings, If you meet a great person, then you've succeeded, Because honestly, I'm sure there's some great stuff being created, but it's just become. Artists are sensitive people. They tend to be shy. Not when you meet them, but generally they tend to be shy, sensitive. They're not very good at promoting themselves. So basically, unless you're a whore today, you cannot get it anywhere. Now, if you're a whore, you're bound not to be a very good artist.
Did you say a whore or
A whore.
A
I
whore.
thought you said
Yeah.
whore.
You know,
Sorry, I'm a bit deaf.
If you're not a whore, you can't get anywhere. If you're a whore, you're not a very good artist.
But what does that mean when you say, we know what the whore means in a sexual term, but what does it mean in art?
Compromise.
That's exactly what it means. Going to suck dick.
What, so that
Physically
you have to
or
submit-
mentally.
Mentally,
No, but
yes.
yeah, physically or mentally. I've heard so many stories, How do you think visitor bimbos get deals? I hope this is not on camera.
Oh, do you want us to cut this bit?
No, but come on, I've heard so many stories. I remember this girl, she's like, oh yeah, you heard that? Oh yeah, just came out from the toilet. She just sucked dick to this girl who was A&R at EMI. Come on. But that's not new. Even great
But that
artists.
won't get you a job necessarily.
Of course it does. Great artists have always been whores, so it's not really an indication of being a good artist or a bad artist. But I'm talking more in terms of intellectually, really. It's worse today to be an intellectual whore than to be a physical whore. It's true. No, but it's true.
Yeah.
Because it's like, I see it all the time.
Absolutely right.
No, but it's true because at least it was clear and simple.
Once upon a
But the thing is, if you think about Hollywood and the casting couch, I mean, all the great actresses,
Sure.
So I mean, that was the same. If they were determined to get somewhere,
And there were a lot of great actresses who also became producers and wrote their own films.
Yeah.
So it's nothing super new. But now, really, today we are controlled by the media and the social media. That is new. It's never been to that extent.
Am I right in saying that what you were just saying there about the physical or intellectual whore is that it's maybe not so terrible to get a job by being on the casting couch and doing a bit of naughty business to get the job, as long as when you do the job you do it with your own integrity and you don't compromise
Well,
that
these
when
people
you're
are
doing it.
they're never going to have great intellectual power. I mean, come on. So
Well,
it's of
Marilyn
no
Monroe was a
importance.
little
exactly.
bit
I
of
was
what you're
thinking she was
describing.
quite brilliant.
What?
Yeah, but Marilyn Monroe is incredibly intelligent, but
That's what
incredibly
I'm
fractured.
well,
I mean, you
but-
hear
I
the
know,
tapes to an
I
analyst,
know,
which
but
you
the
record
thing is,
this
she
at
got
and
where
you read.
she got where she did in a very
But it was also the time. But yeah, but it was also
Yeah, of
Yeah,
but
course.
it was also the time when the mobs were running everything, and
Absolutely,
Sammy
but
J.
the
Carmen
thing is,
they
that's
actually
not
probably
actually
killed
the
and it
point.
was
I mean,
getting
Marilyn Monroe was
I know,
victim,
but
not
what
No,
we're
but-
saying is that she actually actively went out to make manoeuvres, the strategic
But then-
manoeuvres to make
Yeah, for
herself
sure. But
get
then
forward.
she also might have fucked herself up because what she always wanted was a serious part, and the only parts we get is
She
to do
directed
the horses, that amazing film where it's the end.
Indeed, but my question to you directly
It's
to
always
you,
its cast.
my direct question to you is, based on what you were talking about, if you do something that's maybe unsavoury to get a job, but then when you've got the job, you do it with your utmost integrity, the way that you want to, what about that?
Well, I mean, the creativity obviously is the most important thing. I mean, I'm sure David Bowie wasn't a saint, but at the same time, again, it's the difference between being a man and a woman, I mean, Marilyn Monroe was an actress, she wasn't an artist. She acted part that were given to her, So
She also directed as well. She did lots and lots of things. Yeah, I mean, she was a very intelligent, brilliant
I'm sure
woman.
she wasn't stupid, but she was a victim in the end.
No, but I think
Well,
she was
artists might
she
be.
was playing a
Actors are
role in a time and that's how things were, unfortunately, and she was a victim of maybe making some bad decisions about who she slept with, which was
But what was she portraying? I mean, she's got nice sensitivity. She looks good, but I mean, what did she express in terms of philosophy to the
But I
world?
think that's
But I
what
don't
that's
think
what
she-
tore her up.
I don't, but actually, I don't think that was
Vulnerability,
that wasn't the point anyway. Really, I don't think the point is that she kept going on and on and on. Like trained with Ginsberg, etc., to try and reach a certain level. And they're now saying that. I mean, they've been saying for years that she was bumped off by the Kennedy's father, but because she was pregnant. So who knows? But it's the same. Like, why don't we talk about like Diana? She was probably bumped off because she was.
I mean, these
pregnant as
people
well.
were great icons.
Yeah, but the thing is that basically somebody like Marilyn Monroe was actually a very serious artist within her area.
Well, I
And
don't
she-
know about that.
Well, she was a great actress actually. To
She
be
was
able to be
a good
fantastic
actress, sure, but I mean,
to play that comedic role that she did, in things like Some Like It Hot. It's
yeah, I
very,
mean, she
very
was
difficult.
great, but you can't really compare this to.
Had she been given the shot? I mean, what if she'd actually been given at least, not in some kind of superficial or like controlled sort of capacity, if not a Jean Baker, Marilyn Monroe,
Yeah.
call it what you will, who wouldn't, had been in the position to originate or at least influence or contribute, etc.
Well, she did to her last film.
Yes.
That's the point. They gave her more artistic license, and then she got. But I mean, if you think of like somebody like Helen Mirren, like let's look at Helen Mirren, who's a fantastic actress. I'm sure we'll all agree. You know, her career has developed, and the only difference is that she's actually now in her 70s. So, you know, she was able to carry on to get to a certain level of longevity. You know, we can talk about all the great actresses. We can talk about the one who became the leader of the Labour Party in
Glenda Jackson.
yeah. So, you know, who's gone through a whole different myriad of characters and then gone on to produce her own. I mean, there's plenty of women. But the thing is,
actresses are not artists because they play a part. They are never themselves. The whole point with actors is that they are never themselves. Therefore,
Okay,
they
So
don't.
that is their calling in life.
Right.
So they
Yeah.
lay
So they never
themselves
define
down.
any philosophy, which is not a
Well,
very
no,
different
that
thing.
because they're not creators, they're interpreters.
They are creative.
So it's a bit. It's a bit like but
Marcello who becomes
yeah, sorry, can I
Cellini's
ask
lover.
a favour? Is it possible if we have another little break? Because Amadeus was going to play some music and he's going to play quickly and then he has to go and eat some food. So we can all sit and watch him.
Sure, absolutely, absolutely.
Bravis.
Would that be alright?
No.
Does anybody want another drink?